Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another session of At the Table with Rick Grantham. That's me. I'm a Joint Chief Executive at Deal Leaders International. And with me, I have Janine, who's closed 2 deals this year. And actually, she has 2 more to close, and it is already mid-November. So the pressure is definitely on. But yeah, Janine, let's go back to, in fact, I guess it goes back to last year. You know, the deal with FSG closed in February, but I think that most of the work happened obviously before that. Maybe tell us a little bit about it. It's quite an interesting one, and we don't have a lot of businesses like that that we've done deals with.
Yeah. I think thanks, Rick, and thanks for the opportunity. I think it was a very interesting one. As all deals are, no one is the same. I think really the background to this one is it was in facilities management, and the industry was taking on quite a different shape and form. So the opportunity was actually quite. It was great to get into the market at that time. But I think what we really do at Deal Leaders, what our real strength is understanding the needs of the business as well as the needs of the client, and actually matching that together. Really the mandate with the FSG transaction was that the client had built a solid business ready for scale, but they wanted to exit. For their own personal reasons, they wanted to exit. So our mandate was a little bit different in that we needed to go out and look for acquirers that could meet the needs of both the client in their personal capacity and also provide that strength and that springboard for the business for its growth as well.
I remember meeting the main shareholder, Brandon, way back, and it was one of those typical scenarios where he really wanted to exit, but he was worried about value, worried about a few things, disappeared for a while, didn't speak. Eventually gets back to us, and you find actually he did try to do a deal on his own, just didn't work out. And it was one of those classic cases where he thought he had a great deal, but it just couldn't close. And I think that's so often, the reality. I mean, how many offers did you get on that in that transaction?
Yeah, I think we got four offers on that transaction. But again, if I could just almost step back a little bit about, how we really looked at this transaction when Brandon was ready. What we generally do, it's really getting a deep dive and an understanding of the business and understanding its intrinsic value, of the business, and then also understanding what the client needs. Then going in and doing some deep research into the business, into the industry itself. And this is where the uniqueness comes in terms of Deal Leaders, is actually getting all this data and matching this data and finding it's almost like a magnet. You understand the industry, you understand what the buyer's trends are, what they're looking for, and then matching all of this information to, making it an attractive, solution for both the client and the buyer. So
what we discussed, I think, in that very first meeting, I mean, Brandon is the last thing I would expect from a gardener. Doesn't look like a gardener, nothing he says is like a gardener, but the business is all about landscaping and gardening. And right from the start, I remember we realized that there were a lot of services companies out there with strengths in security and cleaning, but not strengths in the garden side. So how did you play that out? How did that help or not help in the process of the sale?
Yeah, so Rick, with this one, again, understanding the trends and the industries, what's going on in the industries, what we saw was there was a lot of integration going on. So buyers were looking at finding that full-on solution for their clients. So Brandon, with the strong look, he had a very strong gardening background, but he also had cleaning services, he had security, he had those ancillaries. And that really made it quite attractive for the ultimate acquirer, because the strong gardening element came in and they could literally do a plug and play and provide that holistic solution to their clients. So it really is you see what's going on in the industry, and then you are able to position it and package the solution, and literally answer the acquirer's problems or their needs.
I think the other thing I recall, and it's probably a good message for other sellers out there, is that although gardening was his strength, he realized the need to expand into the other services.
Yeah.
It was hard to scale those services, but he built a platform, an operational platform that could handle those services. Yes. So he could easily add more things to it, but it was all off the back of this kind of gardening landscaping strength, which I thought was very, very powerful. Tell me a bit more about the deal that he chose in the end. Because, sorry, just maybe a little point for our listeners. They probably know this already, but I keep repeating it. The power of getting 4 offers means that you make a very, very informed decision when it's decision time. I'm sure that happened here, but maybe a little bit more about the deal and the pros and cons and what he landed up choosing.
Yeah, so Rick, I think going back to understanding what the client needs and understanding where the business is in its growth cycle, and what the business needs, coupling that with the buyer's expectations and what they want to do. This transaction, he actually, the big driver for him personally was to expedite a deal, because he was immigrating and he wanted an exit. So that was quite key for him. The other thing was that, he built this business from grassroots, literally a bakkie and 2 drivers. The drivers were still working in the business when the sale happened. And that's like 20, 30 years, 25 years later. So he had this sense of responsibility to his staff that he needed to leave them in a place where they are comfortable with the new shareholder. So that was another driving factor for him. On the buyer's side, theirs was also, it was a very big cultural fit was important. So there was already that matching, that magnet, that attraction to bring the buyer and the seller together. That was very strong. And then the fact that they understood the industry, they knew the industry, they knew each other in the industry. They competed on tenders together. It was that sort of thing. But there was that mutual respect and understanding that you've built this business, and I appreciate it, and I will give you value for what you've built.
And I must say, what's fascinating there is that so often when someone says, I want to sell my business, and by the way, I'm immigrating, to me, that's like a red flag. I mean, it's just, whoa, this is impossible.
Yes.
Because buyers see it as a problem. They think this guy's just going to cut and run.
Yes.
But I think Brandon did well, you did well, that the team did well to make this deal work, even though he had 1 foot in the US already. And that was really impressive from the whole deal perspective. And now we're a year down the line, the business has performed. We're nearly a year down the line. The business has performed incredibly well.
Yeah. And I think, Rick, I'm going to bring you going back to our process and what the purpose of our process is. It really is, at Deal Leaders, it's about that win-win-win strategy. And it's a win for the client in their personal capacity, a win for the business and where it's going to, and a win for the acquirer. And if we are able to achieve that tripod of wins, then as Deal Leaders, we've got the ultimate win. And it really is, that's how our process works so well, and that's why our process works so well.
Did right.
Everyone is happy, at the end of a transaction. Yeah.
Well, congrats on that one, Janine. Let's move on to another exciting one, but one that took a whole lot longer than FSG did, and that was Talisman. And for those of you who are not aware, I think most people are, that it's a great brand in South Africa. Talisman is one of the leading, probably 2 industrial equipment hire businesses, rental businesses, and just a phenomenal brand. The way there's so much brand recognition around it. And you worked very closely with Colin. As I say, a hell of a journey. But what do you think? What were the crunch issues in getting that deal to work?
Yeah, so I think it was a lot more complex than we thought it was. And I mean, just from a structural perspective, it has, it's got a franchise model, that sort of thing. It was quite complex. But again, I think one of the things that we're privileged here at Deal Leaders is we really find really good businesses. He built a solid business, very, very strong business, built for scale. It was self-sustaining, high profitability. It really was in a league of its own in terms, from an industry perspective. His motives were very different to what the FSG motives were. With Colin, he saw the growth. He still had a lot of, fuel in his tank. He wanted to grow this business. And what he was looking for was the right strategic partner to help with that growth, to see the vision, to create that alignment, that like-mindedness. So we had to find that in terms of the buyer.
You might be forgetting some of that detail. The strength was in your ability to present that business to the market. I remember at the time discovering that quite a few people in the industry, in our industry, in the buyer world, were, Colin had actually approached them about doing this deal before we got involved. And they all said, we just didn't get it. It was just too complicated. Yeah. And I know a massive part, which, I think you just do it as part of your day-to-day job, of your achievement there, was to package it in a way that people could understand it. And that enabled us to go to those blue chip acquirers. Again, we got, I think, 4 offers on that deal.
Yes, we did get 4 offers with that deal. And, Rick, it goes back to, you're right, it's the positioning. It's really getting a deep understanding of the business and really getting a deep understanding of the business and doing a deep dive on what the intrinsic value of that business is. And it's highlighting that and almost elevating the value proposition to the types of acquirers, and then delving into the detail of the business, because it is a complex business. All businesses are complex, but it really is about finding those nuggets of wealth and, in each of the businesses, and elevating it and really putting them on the pedestal so that acquirers can see it first, see the value, and then we move forward. And again, it goes back to our process. That's what we do.
Our process, but it, certainly the way I often look back at the Talisman story was, we're about speaking to a large number of acquirers, getting the best people forward, and generally we fairly arm's length until they come to the table. But in this case, we had to do a bit of work on this acquirer. We actually had to corner him and say, hold on, this is why we think this is good for you. Yeah. And it absolutely played out. And I think something that I think, because these deals take so long, sometimes you forget what happened at the beginning and where we added our value was getting to, firstly, finding someone who was willing to do the work.
Yes.
This is complex. And, this acquirer was willing to get involved, do the work, make sure they understood, and kind of play out a strategy rather than just saying, cool, I'm an acquirer, I just want it all on my own terms, and how's it going to work? So tell me a bit more about dealing with that acquirer and how that played out.
Yeah, so Rick, a lot of the time, and you're so right, we do forget about it. The amount of engagement and almost in education to the acquirer that we conduct in our process. You speak to them, you have your first touch with them, they come back to you. You really have to paint the picture on why this is the right deal for you to make. And the way we do that is, and how we do that is because we have a deep understanding of the acquirer. We've researched the acquirer. We've researched the trends. We know what's going on in the market. So, Mr. Acquirer, you need to take advantage of this now, because I'm painting it out for you. It matches your strategy. And we've seen it multiple times. We saw it with the ME Elect Metal deal. Yes. It's exactly the same thing. You have to go back to the acquirer and engage with them and tell them this is why it's so important. So it does come to, it's about research, understanding the buyer, understanding the client and positioning, understanding what the value, those valuable nuggets are, those nuggets of gold on the business, and putting it forward.
And it still amazes me how so often the right acquirer makes the best offer. Because in this case, this business needed an acquirer who could not only acquire the franchisor, but could acquire, alongside Colin and some franchisees. But also the big growth plan is to take it further than that, is to acquire more franchisees, grow the business. You needed someone with deep pockets. And it so happened that the guys with the deepest pockets made the best offer. Whereas the other guys maybe could have made a better offer, but they wouldn't have been the right party. And somehow the best party makes the best offer.
And it does. And you know why it does that is because you've actually, as deal leaders, what you've done is you've answered all their questions. So they're prepared to pay that premium because they see the synergies. The lines you've already drawn the lines on why this is an attraction to you and how you're going to grow this business. And I think that that's really where the value add with deal leaders comes in, is that premium. A premium, that 10% premium, that 10, 20, 30% premium, we've painted the picture already for the acquirer.
And now, Janine, tough question for you to answer, but this took a long time. What made it take so long?
Yeah, look, it was, there were a number of things. So first of all, from an operational stance, it was the due diligence was intense. So
complicated business. It's not just, I own a lawnmower, so I'm going to rent it to you for so much money. You've got to buy the lawnmower, so you've got to have an asset management side. You've got to buy those assets now. You've got to rent them on to the franchisee, and he's got to rent it on to someone else. So there's a lot of activity in the business.
So multiple entities that needed to be reviewed. Also, multiple individuals. So you mentioned, the franchisor, that consolidation, that takes a lot of time to get that consolidation. It's a lot of engagement. It's a lot of, stakeholder engagement, stakeholder management. It takes a lot to get everyone up to the same level. So that due diligence took a while as well. And then from the acquirer's perspective, there was obviously exchange controls that needed to be considered. Competition Commission needed to be engaged. So with the complex structure, there's also a lot of legals that come into play, and legals, you can't do legals without tax. So a lot of tax engagement. You want to minimize your tax leakage as much as possible, particularly with complex structures and with multiple entities. So a lot of tax engagement, legals, commercial aspects, then the financials and the consolidations with that, the exchange controls, the Competition Commission, you name it, that challenge was.
And I do think that, sort of message to people out there with complex businesses, because there are a lot of them out there, is find an acquirer willing to go the journey with you. And then you can solve all the problems in the deal. You literally, and they solved a lot of structural issues, but they had an acquirer who was willing to get involved and get their hands dirty or roll up their sleeves, maybe is a better term. And everyone knew what the end goal was. So there's a huge amount. In that time, there was so much engagement between the acquirer and Colin. So that they built trust significantly over that period.
Yeah. It's that, Rick, it comes down to the basics, the beginnings. They had that alignment and they shared the same value and vision for the business. So they were prepared. They saw what needed to be done, and they were prepared to literally roll up their sleeves and get it done.
Yeah, fantastic. Any final comments on that, or how you plan to finish the year?
Yeah, so finish the year strong. We received an offer. We were literally in the market for under a month with a software business, so we're looking to close that. We're going OA. Well, rather, we're going OA at the end of this week with that one.
So OA means offer acceptance, for those who don't know.
Sorry.
Bit of jargon.
Yeah, so we're going into, so now the hard work starts with that one. And then we've got a technology distribution business that we're closing soon as well. as well as actually it's as well as a foundry, which is literally
and those should close in the next week or so. So those are very exciting. So you should have 4 this year, and you might even sneak in a 5th. Fantastic.
Okay.
Janine, well done. You're a great asset to the business.
Thank you very much, Rick.
At everything that you do, and well done on the deals that you've done this year. Congrats.
Really appreciate it. No, thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.